Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we're back in War Thunder and I just want to apologise for these videos today being later than usual. Unfortunately my area suffered a power cut and hopefully everything goes right for now. But anyway, let's get into some news. Another devblog, or they call it news but it's basically a devblog, has come out and it's talking about the Fletcher class destroyer. Now, in the past we have had devblogs based on the Project 7U, which is the Subrazielny class destroyer, and also the Tribal class destroyer. Now we have the American variant that they're putting into the game, and I have some interesting thoughts about it, generally when it comes to how it's going to be when it comes to aircraft and stuff like that. But anyway, let's get into it. Introduced in the early 1940s and serving well after World War II with other nations, few ships ever managed to gain such an iconic status during their operational service as the US Fletcher class destroyer. Instantly recognizable to most fans of military history, this naval legend is ready to be deployed in one of the upcoming naval testing sessions to once more change the tide of battle. So yes, this is actually a really well-known class of destroyer, and one of the main reasons is because there was a ton of them made, or at least a ton of different ones, ranging from the USS Van Valkenburg to the USS Antony, the USS Souffle, the USS Dyson, the David W. Taylor. They're all basically named after people, and there's just a million examples of them, so it's a great choice for War Thunder in itself. Though outmatching Fletcher's real-life performance will be nigh impossible, future commanders of the ship in War Thunder will have all tools at their disposal to give the real thing a good run for its money. Sporting a fearsome array of offensive armaments ranging from 527mm cannons mounted in single turrets to 10 533mm torpedo tubes spread across two launchers located midships. The Fletcher is able to confidently take on any foe in battle, only to send it to the bottom of the ocean shortly after. And while the player is busy engaging the enemy ships with the main cannons or torpedoes, the AI gunners will make devastating use of the vast array of AA mounts spread out evenly across the ship's deck, not letting any warbird get too close for comfort. The AA armament of the Fletcher consists of a number of 20mm Oerlikon and 40mm Bofors cannons, two highly effective and renowned World War II AA weapons. However, should the tide of battle change against our Fletcher commanders, making retreats the only viable option, do not despair. Two steam turbines powered by 4 boiler rooms capable of generating 60,000 horsepower allow the Fletcher to reach speeds of 36 knots, 68 kilometers an hour. This, combined with the sleek shape of the hull, gives commanders of the Fletcher excellent agility, thus allowing for quick escapes from perilous situations. So this machine basically has everything. Where there is certain parts of the Tribal class destroyer which you may say may not be as good as other types of destroyers or class of destroyers around the era, generally what I would point to is the anti-aircraft capabilities, the fact that it was made a lot earlier. Maybe it doesn't have as much engine power, which it doesn't. I mean, the Fletcher class in itself has, what did it say, 60,000 horsepower. While the Tribal class, when it was first built, which I believe is what they're focusing on, there was 44,000 horsepower on that ship. The Project 7U, so we'll be a bit liberal with it and call it the Subrazielny, or however you say it, that had, it could go 40 knots and also had 60,000 horsepower. So that's much more normal. But then again, it doesn't have as many large guns and doesn't have as many anti-aircraft guns. The Project 7U with its 4 130mm compared to the 5 127, and since they're all split up on the Fletcher class, so you can fire them independently of each other, it's going to be kind of interesting seeing this thing in action, because I'm pretty sure, and I think it's a safe bet to say, that the Fletcher class is just better than the Tribal class and the Project 7U as well. So it's going to be interesting if they want this to be comparable to the other ones, just because it seems flat out better. It doesn't have a negative aspect, which the tribal class and the project do. And they further clarify it in their next statement. The Fletcher is a true jack of all trades and will likely find many fans among our players. She gives the captain absolute freedom in terms of choosing the right tactic for the task at hand, regardless of whether her commander prefers an aggressive approach, spearheading the attack, or a more defensive one, choosing to support his allies in small fleet operations instead. The choice is truly yours when commanding the Fletcher. However, don't forget that victory can only be achieved through good team play and coordination. While the Fletcher might be a good ship, she can't single-handedly bring an easy victory to the team. Stay close to your teammates and observe their actions, as getting cut off from them might result in an unplanned deep-sea exploration in the nearest coral reef, followed by a potentially costly repair bill. That's an interesting statement, isn't it? We talked about, was it last week, how Gaijin generally likes to balance stuff not just by BR, not just by rank, not just by, other factors such as weaponry and the amount of armor. They also like to balance by repair cost. And this may be another example of this. They say it themselves, being a jack of all trades and, being basically good at everything. This may be the primary ship that people will use in battles. It also depends on what we see from the Germans. We haven't really seen anything from them which is anything near what we've seen from everyone else. And also the Italians, if they decide to throw it in at the same time. I really doubt they will. But the Japanese will probably have something which is at least comparable to the Fletcher. They have some quite good destroyers, and a lot of the negative aspects are not taken into account when we look at War Thunder. So stuff like radar, stuff like communication, and things like that. So maybe they're going to try and balance this by its repair bill. Obviously, we're still in the early stages of testing of ships, so therefore, when it comes to talking about balance and everything like that, well, I think now they're just trying to work on the core mechanics, but balance is definitely going to be something that I'm personally going to be thinking about. Because when I look at the Fletcher, and when I compare it to what I've seen already, and when I compare it to some of the Japanese destroyers that, I think it's comparable to, the reason I didn't add it into the list of ships which could be good against the tribal class destroyer is basically because of its AA capabilities and, as they said, the fact it's a jack of all trades. I tried to pick classes of destroyers which would have advantages in certain areas and disadvantages in others, therefore giving you some kind of playstyle and being able to work out and around different ships. But with the Fletcher, it's fast. It has comparable armor, it has basically the same weaponry as a tribal class. The tribal class destroyer has it has 8 120mm, whereas the Fletcher class has 5 127mm. But if you see how the tribal class guns are sorted out, they have, they're in sets of 2. So basically you've got to fire 2 at the same time. So in effect, you have, even though you have 2 guns, because you have to fire them at the same time, and because of all of that jiggery pokery, you basically only have about 4 guns. Since you're probably going to miss with one of those guns, it's easy to say you're down to 3 or something like that. So overall, because of the flexibility of the Fletcher class having its 5 guns all over the ship instead of in sets of 2, I generally think it can be compared to the tribal class destroyer. Now, it's kind of interesting that they've decided to go for the Bofors and the Oerlikons. When we look at the tribal class, it is a pre-World War II machine. It is from 1938 when it was actually put into service. When we look at the Subraniechny class, it was built before World War II, or at least the first one, and then it was in service in 1940. So that's very comparable to the Fletcher class. The Fletcher class itself was built in 1941, and then it started its life in 1942, and it was used until the early 2000s by countries such as Mexico, showing how useful it was over time. So the big difference between the ships that we've seen before in the Fletcher class is the AA. So it talked about the Bofors and the Oerlikons before. Now, it's kind of interesting because some of the early models of the Fletcher class actually had some 28mm on them. It had 4 28mm automatic cannons instead of the Bofors, but they've decided to go for the Bofors, so therefore that to me is a clear sign that they're trying to set this thing up as a jack of all trades. Because if they decided to go for those 4 28mm, they're definitely worse than the Bofors are. So, you know, you could see that aircraft would be able to approach us, maybe with not too much issue. The issue comes in when you actually look at the amount of anti-aircraft guns this thing has. If we take a very conservative estimate and say, you know, the lowest amount it can have, you have 6 40mm, which are the Bofors, and 7 20mm, which are the Oerlikons. Now, when we look at the tribal class, one of the things that was pointed out during testing, and also, you know, I recognized before, was the fact that a lot of these guns are in pockets, very similar to the large cannons. When you look at the 20mm Oerlikons, you know, you have a four packet of them in an area, so maybe they'll have a lot of blind spots. That's not the case with the Fletcher class. The Fletcher class just has guns all over it. There isn't a designated area where they have a ton of anti-aircraft guns. They're just spotted all over this ship. So there ain't gonna be no blind spots for this thing. There will be areas where you will be able to you know, dodge some of the guns, but from the placements of the guns, most of them are sat on the side of the hull and the center of the ship, and some of them seem to be sat on the top of it. If you look at the pictures, you can generally see them and where they are. So you have the larger guns at the top areas, and then you have the smaller guns, which even look like 50 cals, to be quite honest. Which I'm wondering if they will fire. But it seems like they're trying to focus on the AI aspect of it. But I tell you what, like, that's a lot of guns. 6 40mm and 7 20mm. Let's just say half of them can shoot you, right? So 3 40mm and 4 20mm. That's a hell of a lot of guns going to be shooting at you if you're trying to approach this thing with a torpedo. If you're using rockets or if you're dive bombing, I think is going to be a thing of the past with these ships. I don't think it will work at all, just because people will see you coming in. It's going to be, at least you're going to trade 1 for 1, which, you know, I mean, I suppose that's not too bad. But still, you're never going to get out of there alive against a Fletcher class. When it comes to high altitude bombing, it's going to be very hard to hit this thing, especially if it's cantering along at 36.5 knots with its 60,000 horsepower engines, or, you know, collectively I should say, since it has 2 large engines. So that's the conservative estimate. The expansive estimate, which is probably going to be closer to the truth, is 10 40mm Bofors and 12 20mm Oerlikons. Good luck getting near this thing. They even say it themselves in the damn Devblog. Like, I don't understand how anybody's going to get near this thing with a plane. Now, the good thing is, as they say, the Fletcher class destroyer will be available for all players, or 4 players to try out in one of the upcoming naval testing sessions. Keep your spyglass focused on the news to find out more about the development of naval forces and announcements regarding the test sessions. So, luckily, I do now have access to the naval beta, so I will be able to have a look at this stuff firsthand, but I just tell you, I'm worried about this. This is another step in the direction of just having ships be these monoliths, which, first of all, once again, what's a tank gonna do against this? I really doubt now, looking at these ships, that ground forces are gonna be anywhere near these naval ships, which is a real shame, to be honest. but there is some that you have to make some compromises if the majority of the community want larger ships. But now we're getting to a point where you have to ask yourself, how is a plane going to get near this ship? In my opinion, it's not going to. It really isn't, unless you've got an incredibly quick plane, or unless you're using rockets at an incredibly high speed and ducking and diving, because for God's sake, if you go in a straight line, you're going to die. You're going to have to hope that the guy who is piloting these ships either has a terrible crew when it comes to his AI, or is brain dead. Because a lot of people have brought up the point that you'll be focused on shooting at other ships while moving this around, so therefore the planes will be able to come in. Well, that all depends on how good the AI is. What if it's the same as Airfield AA AI? What are you going to do then? And also, I know a lot of players who can multitask, and they can multitask extremely efficiently. They will shoot their rounds, and they will look around them just after, and then just as the rounds are reloaded again, they'll be able to shoot again. So they're able to do that. You see it in tanks all the time. Nobody really stays in the gun sight view after shooting, unless you are sure that nobody is around you. So we're going to have to see with these things. I am, let's just call it concerned, how planes are going to get anywhere near this. Maybe they're not designed to. Maybe it's just going to be ship-on-ship combat. And then that's not even talking about the patrol boats. What the hell are they supposed to do? Hit it with a torpedo? This thing, once again, can go over 60 kilometers an hour. And it's not exactly, you know, it's quite a flexible machine. It's very maneuverable. I have no idea how you would get hit by a torpedo in it, unless its acceleration is terrible. And guess what, it ain't, because it's got 60,000 horsepower behind it. Oh my. I want to see how this works. I really do. Because I'm not confused. That's the wrong word. I can't visualize it in my mind where ships will not just take over the game when it comes to, first of all, ground forces. They've already done that in my head. But when it comes to aircraft, I'm going to have to play it and see. But right now, in my head, I just can't see it. I can't see how a plane gets anywhere near something like a Fletcher class. But anyway, it's nice to see it come to the game. It's going to be interesting to see if this will have a higher BR than something like a Tribal class or a Project 7U. As I said, they're in the testing stages now, but that means all we have left now is the German destroyer and also a Japanese one. I'm really looking forward to see which one they pick for the Japanese, not so much the German, because they have incredibly limited options. But anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.